Episode 3, Fantasy Hockey News. Bill back. So what are we covering today? Well, like I said, we're going to be covering the top 10 fantasy point scoring defenders. And what does that mean? Well, we'll be covering goals, assists, shots, and power play points. Kind of what I covered last video with the rankings that goals are worth 5, assists are worth 2, power play points are worth 1, and shots are worth 0.25. Then we totaled them all up together, and what did I find? Well, this is what we got. Carlson, Yossi, Pietrangelo, DeAngelo, Hedman, Theodore, Werenski, Burns, Letang, and Krug. So I'm not going to read over all the points, but I just want to go over the big stuff. And what's the big stuff? Well, all these defenders here scored over 10 goals except one, Krug. So how did Krug make the list? Well, he got a lot of power play points to make up for low shots in comparison to everybody else and low goals. So if you're not scoring goals, then you're scoring lots of points on the power play to be a top 10 fantasy point scoring defender. It just makes sense. So what does that all mean? Well, when you get all of this, it means you have to play a lot of minutes as a defender because you just need those opportunities. You're not always shooting the puck first, right? You're always defense first as a defender. So to get that opportunity, you need a lot of time on the ice. And all of these defenders, if you look here, get that first pair of minutes except one, or except two, I should say. So right here we have DeAngelo and Krug. Only two of those guys here aren't getting those first pairing minutes. So what does that mean? It means they're getting probably second and third pairing minutes, and then they're used as a power play specialist on their teams, or they get that opportunity to play a lot of power play minutes. And what do you see? Well, a lot of power play points. 20, and then 28. Excuse me. So, if you're not getting a lot of minutes, then you're probably making the best out of the opportunity that you have. So that's just a little bit of a basic intro that I want to cover here. Let's just see if I missed anything. So other than that, I just want to take a closer look at Tony DeAngelo here. Got my little board set up. Okay, so I got two teams here. So first team is the Rangers, and then the second team is Columbus. And so I just want to compare a couple things. So DeAngelo, like I said, if you're playing 19 minutes a game, you're probably playing second or third pairing minutes. He is. So he's playing 19 minutes a game, yet he got so many fantasy points. How did he do that? Well, he made the most of his opportunity on the power play. And he got lucky. So look who he's playing with. Zibanejad, 352. Panarin, 362. Strome, 220. Kreider, 220. And then these two guys both made the top 10 players in fantasy point production. So DeAngelo playing with a lot of talent here. Compare that to Columbus's power play. Well, Domi under 200, Dubois right at 200, Bjorkstrand under 200, Atkinson 130, and then Werenski seems to be the centerpiece here, 201 fantasy points. And so Werenski's getting 23 minutes a game, almost 24. And then looking just at everybody else on their team, 20, 20, and then not enough games. So I used 40 games as the cutoff here, and they didn't make it. So didn't even bother looking at them. So outside Jones and Werenski, who Tortorella seems to ride, Jones doesn't even get a lot of points here. So just seems that Werenski's the go-to guy on the power play, and that's why they use him here. Compare that to DeAngelo. So DeAngelo, not a lot of minutes, just seems to be making the most on his power play time. So right now I kind of want to say to you fantasy owners that have DeAngelo, who even though he made it fourth on the list in terms of point production, I would say you should be careful in expecting that kind of production again, just because you have Adam Fox here, who was a rookie, and he just had 23 minutes or 23 seconds less of ice time per game, and only finished 50 points fantasy points less than DeAngelo. Fox actually had a pretty good year as a rookie, so he might actually come and snake this spot from DeAngelo in the not too distant future. So something to look out for in terms of fantasy, in terms of DeAngelo. I mean, he's working with a lot of talent. Expect him to get points, but is he going to be a top 4 fantasy point defender next year in terms of just scoring ability? My guess is not. So if you were a DeAngelo owner, I'd say try to trade for anybody on the list. Oppositely, I'd say if you had Marinsky, he's a pretty rare defender who's able to make a lot out of nothing here. So he's kind of a go-to guy in terms of fantasy. So I wouldn't trade him for a lot of players on this list either. Probably just Carlson, to be honest. And that's because there's no one on the Washington team, kind of like this, who would take over his spot on the power play. He is the guy. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that's all I got to say for that in terms of things to look out for, things that you should keep in mind in terms of minutes. So I'm just going to take this down now. So, in conclusion, what are we looking for here? Well, I mean, first of all, you should probably take a look at a defender's minutes before you even look at points. See how the player is utilized in the game. If you can, try to find their power play minutes. And that's the point of my Google Doc in the Excel sheet. I'm going to have all that stuff ready for you. So just got to click a tab, find it, and easily accessible for you. I'm still working on it, so just bear with me here. I know a lot of people in the comments are giving me a hard time, but bear with me. I am working on it. So working on time on the ice, and then from there, look at their goals. If they score, I don't know, over 12 goals a game, pretty elite company. So you want to try to project that defender who's able to score that many goals. And who do I think will do that? Probably Cale Makar next year. Heiskanen might have a chance. Hughes in Vancouver might have a chance. So I expect at least one of those 3 guys to be on the list next year and take someone off. So you're looking for goals. So after looking at time on ice, after looking at goals, look for their ability to score points on the power play. So those are the big 3 that I would consider in a top 10 fantasy point scoring defender. So next episode, we're going to look at who would have been considered like someone that struggled over the terms of the season. And from that, we can maybe guess if we should let go of that player, try to trade him, or maybe he just had a down year and might bounce back. So that's the goal of the next episode, try to find about 10 players that look like they have a struggling season and decide what to do with those players. And then after that, we'll try to find those value picks that for defenders. So we'll go through, or I'll go through, and then I'll make a case for 10 defenders who I think had a surprisingly good season, even though they didn't have a lot of points. So, and then from there, we'll try to project if that was it, or if they have another step that they could take. So one of those defenders that comes to mind is Vince Dunn. So Dunn didn't have a lot of points, but he was able to get a lot of those points on the power play, and I don't think he had the opportunity, but he's still a young guy. So he's got Parayko and now Krug ahead of him in terms of power play opportunity, but at the same time, if St. Louis is smart, they might give him the opportunity to play a little bit more power play time. So what I would classify Dunn would be an ideal number 4 guy, number 5 guy on both a Yahoo, where you got 16 players, and a Deep Dynasty, where you got about 50 players. So Dunn, I think, fits real nicely into that number 4 or 5 slot. And that's what we'll be looking at. We'll be taking a deep dive here in fantasy defense in the next couple episodes. So if you don't mind, give me a like and subscribe. And then follow me on Twitter at FantazyHockey. I'll just write it out here. Let me write it out right. So shoot me your questions and I will feel free to answer them. All things fantasy hockey related. Episode 3, Top 10 Defenders by Bill.